All right, welcome to episode 83 of the At Bat podcast presented by War Media, where we give you our thoughts on the latest Chicago baseball news as well as take a trip around the league. I am Saul Rodriguez, joined by my co-host Miles Porter, as well as Gabe Wilkins, who has his own podcast, The State of Gabe, available on Spotify. How we doing, everybody? How we doing, Miles?
Hey, doing good. I just want to point out that I saw Caitlin Clark drop the most quiet 35 against Northwestern last night, bro.
Oh yeah, I saw they
Oh
were
my
playing.
gosh.
What was the
She
final?
had
What
a
was the final
hezzy,
score?
I think it was like 110 to 70 something, 170. It was 100 to 70 something.
Damn.
And this team is just out of this world, bro. I knew that
Oh
she was
my.
real when she hit this little hezzy step back three. I was like, oh, okay, see you in the WNBA. Got it. Understood. It was
Dude,
so quick, bro. Such a quick trigger. Oh my gosh.
man, yeah, her shot is so nasty, especially 3 point. Like she just pulls up. It's like it's nasty. Like I can't wait till she. I mean, she's is she gonna be in WNBA next year or no? I'm not sure because
She's a senior now,
I
right?
think she's
she's
a
senior
senior
now.
now, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
she's a
okay,
senior.
okay.
Yeah, it's time.
Because you know damn well she's gonna be in that 3 point because you know how they announced that Curry versus Ionescu
Yeah,
3 point
yeah,
contest. So like she's gonna you know damn well Kaden Clark is gonna be there next year. Like because
for
that's gonna be
sure.
badass. But yeah, no, yeah, I saw they were playing Northwestern. I was like, man, good luck Northwestern. I was like, hopefully they play, but that's rough. But Gabe, what about you? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. It's 50 degrees outside. It's sunny for the first time in a long time in the city of Wynn. Glad to see that. Heard about the Caitlin Clark performance. I knew a couple people that was on here doing media work for it. That's cool to see. But outside of that, I'm doing well in spite of a slow free agency period in MLB.
Oh yeah. And you mentioned the weather. 51 degrees right now here is short weather, so definitely enjoying it. I'm like, I tell people, I'm like, it's gonna be 50 next week. I'm like, or like when it was last week, I was like, it's gonna be 50. Like, I want to see you guys at the beach. I want to see you guys at Lake Michigan. Because I'm like, damn, it's been so cold. I'm like, you might as well enjoy these days. Like, it's a summer day. So, um, but yeah, we'll as you mentioned with free agency, we'll get into it. I mean, the Cubs signed Hector Neris. There's still a lot going on when it comes to rumors. Of course, there's always gonna be rumors, but it, I just realized too this morning that it being Thursday, February 1st, as we're recording this, there's gonna be baseball this month. It's just it never fails to just hit me and just like it's just so beautiful because January literally those it's funny because those memes about January are so accurate. Like it takes like 5 months to finish January. Like it's so real. And
yeah.
so I'm glad it's finally over and we can focus on more baseball and all that. But
Thank
we'll
you.
we'll start with the Cubs and their signing of Hector Neris because there's plenty of people talking about it because of the contract size and because of how much he got. People didn't expect him to get what he got, which was $9 million for a year, and then he has an option for it's a club option for the second year it becomes a player option if he gets at least 60 appearances. What do you think about that deal, Miles? And then, just in general, like when it comes to the Cubs bullpen, because that was one of the biggest needs the Cubs had going into the offseason was the
Yeah.
bullpen, and they've added a good
Hmm.
amount. I mean, they've
Yeah.
added guys from leagues in Korea. So like
Yeah.
they've added guys from all over the place to kind of construct the classic Cubs bullpen because they never
Yeah.
honestly, in the last few years, they've never gotten really elite bullpen arms, I guess, unless you want to count, obviously, besides Kimbrel. But like, they don't really go that route half the time. And I think even getting Kimbrel kind of showed us like why they don't. I mean, I know he had one really good year with us, but he had, when he struggled when he got here, I think Jed Hoyer was probably like, hey, this is why we don't always go for the elite arm because you're paying a lot of money for something that might not
Yeah.
work. But and I think that's another reason why they didn't go for a guy like Josh Hader. I mean, what he got 95 mil. I understand he's probably the best reliever in the game right now. I understand that, but like, damn, like you don't know where our guys' arms are gonna go, especially in short, appearances and all that. So yeah, what would you think about this move in the Cubs bullpen in general?
I love it. I like seeing the Cubs really make moves, to really bolster that bullpen, as that was one of our faults at the end of last year. Now, one of my big things is that I'm getting a little bit sick and tired of the 1 year, see how it goes, and then because the Cubs have been doing a lot of that over the
Mm-hmm.
past 2, 3 years. I think I do believe that for this it makes sense. Um, Yeah, I'm really loving where we're at in terms of the bullpen, guys coming up, um, you know, the rotation, and I'm very happy with it. And so I'm hoping that we continue to, add the correct pieces. I don't really know if there's much more room for pieces to be added. I've heard maybe some reconstructioning in terms of Adbert Alzolay being a setup guy in the eighth, and then Hector finishing off in the ninth. I'm just hearing these little fans, giving their little opinions as to how the Cubs can go about it. So it's cool. That's good conversation. We have options. We have arms we can use. Um, the deeper, the better.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when it came to the closing part, I didn't even think about that until I heard something similar to what you said about with Alcinayan, like what he might do
Yeah,
next year and all that.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, last year he had Neris had a 171 in 71 games. And he had two saves, but you look at prior years, he has closed before. He was in the Phillies on those up and coming Phillies teams, and he had 28 saves, 26 saves. So he's done it
yeah,
before.
yeah,
Not a giant amount of success. 2017 was probably his like I guess, or 2016 was probably his breakout year. He had 258 in 79 games. So he's been in the league for a minute. I mean, he's 34, going in age 35 season. So I think that's probably the reason why the Cubs probably went on a shorter deal. But I
yeah,
am right with you, Miles, because I feel like when your team's signing a bunch of 1 years, it doesn't feel like they're going for it type of deal, right? Like,
yeah.
and so that's the one thing I think about. But my Gabe, what did you think about this move? And then, like I said, the Cubs bullpen in general, because like I said, it was a point of emphasis going into the offseason, and the Cubs are always, constructing it or reconstructing it, and getting guys like Julian Merriweather, for example, that they like, got and he was a guy that was pitching late in games last year. So that was crazy to me to see, and there was always potential in him, and he was in Toronto and all that, but he was never able to find it. And it seems like he's found a home in Chicago. Hopefully he's able to replicate it. But what do you think about this move though?
But Hector Neris, like you said, so he coming off a career year, had an
Mm-hmm.
ERA under 2, um, made some improvements in his repertoire that was able to help him get a major drop in regards to the quality of contact that hitters were able to make against him. My only question is can he parlay the success that he had in the regular season with Houston here in Chicago
Mm-hmm.
for Cub fans' sake? Because if you looked at his 7 appearances in the postseason, his performance didn't match up to what you saw in the regular season. He surrendered. He had 6 earned runs and 8 and a third innings of work in the Astros ALDS and ALCS matchups against the Twins and Rangers, respectively. So when you put that all together, you kind of don't know what you're getting. But it's one of those low risk, high reward moves. And I understand taking a 1 year flyer on a 34-year-old arm, especially as opposed to someone as younger, you would probably get them a little bit more security. But you don't really know what you're going to get. But if you could get that Hector Neris that you saw last year in Houston and have him serve in the role of a 7th inning or 8th inning guy, setup role, I think that will be where he's best suited. I don't see him as a closer unless if it's an emergency situation. Even though he's had some success, he's also had some struggles as a closer as well. If you notice, he was the guy that they called on in the 7th innings most of the time in Houston, and then they went to Abreu in the 8th and Presley in the ninth before the Josh Hader signing. And with them signing Hader, the Astros didn't really have a need for him. So he's going into a situation with a team that's looking to compete and win the Central. And I think this is a nice situation for him. And hopefully it works out because as we know, bullpen arms, you could be up 1 year, you could be down the next. You never know what happens. So hopefully, he can stay consistent and show what he showcased his last season during the regular season in Houston.
Yeah, and I definitely hope that they give Alcala at least an opportunity to close, because like as much as I'm all for whatever they do with the bullpen, whatever they think is right. And especially with a guy like Tommy Hotovy as the Cubs pitching coach. But I do hope they give Alcala an opportunity to close, just because of the fact that like he showed some great strides last year. I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to be an elite closer because whatever, but I will say he does have the closer feel. Like he goes in there, he's got a lot of energy. He goes nuts when he gets the big strikeout at the end. Like So I definitely love the passion, just like the energy he brings into the ninth inning because he just, especially at Wrigley when it's the place is going nuts, like you need a guy like that, that kind of asks for it. So yeah, we'll see what happens there, but he definitely, if the Cubs were open to getting Hader, because I mean, there was some rumors about it. Then some people were like, yeah, also that would be a great setup man. In that case, obviously, you let Hader close. So it's going to be real fascinating to see how the Cubs bullpen, turns the page in this year, to see the guys that came up, like I said, Merriweather, that they got for a short deal and was able to, get stuff done. So, on the other side of things, as well, Cody Bellinger update, because of course he's still not signed anywhere. And apparently it came out last week that he hasn't gotten an offer from anybody. And John Heyman reported that he doesn't see him landing anywhere, but Chicago, basically, with the Cubs. But I just don't know what to make of it. I mean, it could go anywhere. And yeah, Miles, I mean, that says it all. I mean, I honestly just so tired of hearing about this Bellinger thing until he signs somewhere.
It's
But what?
exhausting, man. It's
Yeah,
tiring at
it
this
really
point.
is. It really is just like hearing, oh, he's rumored here, blah blah blah, this and then, but and apparently too though, because I'm like thinking to myself, okay, so the Cubs are one of the last teams there. If he signs with us, I'm sure it'll be cheap, right? And I heard that, and then apparently it was reported that it's still around the ballpark of 200 mil. And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it or anything like that, but in my opinion, like I just wish it'd be less than that. But I understand that with the market, I understand with what other players have gotten, I understand with what he did last year. So we'll see what happens. But uh, uh, Gabe, what did you think about or what do you think about the fact that no team has made him an offer, and just the way that it looks like Boris ball, and how it's going? I mean, this thing honestly is probably going to go into March, in my opinion. I don't see how it ends anytime soon.
You brought up the name that I was gonna bring up, Scott Boyd.
Yeah.
He has
Yep.
a stranglehold all over the
Mm-hmm.
market right now.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to offer Cody Bellinger a contract. No one wants to offer Blake Snell a
Yep.
contract. And I get that the Cubs are the only team, according to sources that are respected in the industry, that are the team that had the best chance of getting them. But
Mm-hmm.
nobody's talk about the San Francisco Giants. They
Yep.
still got a lot of money over there in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they having a tough time attracting free agency,
Yeah.
free agents over there. But if you're able to get Cody Bellinger over there, I don't see how you can't do it, especially if you make an offer that's bigger than the Cubs offer.
Yeah.
Like I'm not one of these people who think, well, oh, the Cubs just have the upper hand. Yeah, they
Mm-hmm.
do technically, but even if he were to resign with the Cubs, right? I don't know if I could see him resigning on a multi-year deal unless if it's exactly what Scott Boras wants.
Mm-hmm.
Like they playing hardball, man. They playing a
Yeah.
lot of hardball. I can see a lot of guys in Scott Boras' camp. The top 4 free agents really still on the board, signing 1-year deals at this point.
Mm-hmm.
You got to, man. But unless if you're gonna get something that you just can't refuse. I've never seen a situation like this, honestly, where you have 4 players all on the market: Chapman, Bellinger, Snell, and Montgomery, sitting without any offers. I can't recall the last time I've seen that. So when I look at Bellinger's situation, I'm if I'm a Cub fan, I'm kind of concerned. I'm very
Oh my gosh, yes.
very concerned if I'm a Cub fan.
Yeah, I mean, trust me. Yeah, I'm right there with you. But at the same time, I feel like over the last couple of months, I'm also just kind of realizing, like, I'm also kind of just getting myself ready just to go into the season without Cody Bellinger.
You
You know
have
what I
to.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
and the thing is, we've talked about this before. The depth that the Cubs have in the minors with PCA. Not that PCA is going to start in the majors. He might, but not that it doesn't look like that's the plan. But if PCA starts in the majors, you have that. You could have you could shuffle around and do a lot of things.
Owen Casey.
Center field. Yeah, exactly. Cases,
Yeah.
waiting on in the minors, but also like they have guys that could play center field. You could play Morel out there. I don't know his defense. I know there's a lot of things that have to be answered, but realistically, if you play him there like once a week or something, but there's a lot of things you can switch around and move around and do stuff like that. So I'm not necessarily. I do know realistically that if they want to make the playoffs, you're probably going to have a guy like Cody Bellinger lineup. I do understand that. But like at the same time, I'm just looking at it. They might not get him. So yeah, you're right on that. That like there's definitely a concern there of not getting him at all. But Miles, where do you stand on this right now? Because like I'm right. You made that face because I'm like, yeah, I agree. Like, dude, just like it is exhausting just hearing it over and over again. Like, oh, he's a bit, both the Cubs this, the Cubs that, Cody Bellinger, and it's like we've literally been doing this for like 3 months. So,
bro, yeah, man. I mean, like, and I love the point that Gabe made. Where like, as a direct Cubs fan, this makes me nervous, bro.
yeah.
And look, we all know Scott Boras is he likes to get his athletes paid. He got freaking Chris Bryant 182 million in Colorado, and so I we're talking about someone who's demanding a lot of money with a team that is not willing to spend a lot of money. So now we're in this very difficult limbo where it's like, okay, well, we got spring training in was it 16 days, 15 days, something like that. I mean, pitchers and catchers reporting, but it's still spring training because other players are reporting in during that time. I mean, I think I'm frustrated, but I don't think it's specifically anyone who like is a Cubs fan that I should be frustrated at in terms of we didn't add anything really offensively. We didn't bring anybody in, so it does concern me a little bit when now okay, we're going in losing a guy that was a key component last year to the success that we had. Granted, I know that these young players can step up and do wonders for us this coming season. But it does frustrate me a little bit, and being a Cubs fan, where I think we've added the pitching depth like we should have, kind of like what we touched on earlier in the show, but we haven't really added anything offensively. And I love that we're banking on some of these younger guys, but I also hope that we also realize we weren't able to finish last year. So I'm kind of in the middle of things. I'm annoyed with this. I'm hoping that they come to some sort of agreement. Scott Boras, I know you want to get your guys paid, but Jesus Christ, honestly, I think I really do believe it's going to come down to like March. I really do.
Yeah.
And not just for Belly, for the other guys that are also free agents still. I just, I'm hoping for the sake of being a Cubs fan, I'm hoping that he does sign somewhere because the reality is if he doesn't sign here, there will be a team that's going to figure it out and bring him aboard. That's what I don't want. I'm tired of us missing out on these kind of things and it biting us years down the line. That's where I do not want the Cubs to be because it will sting.
Yeah,
can you imagine if a team like the Nationals got Cody Bellinger, man?
Oh my! No, even worse.
Like, this can
or the
really
Angels?
happen.
That's what I'm thinking about. Yes,
that's the crazy, and he's gonna be on a team that's not good, and they're gonna seek to flip him for assets to stockpile their farm system. Like this is what we getting at. We could see something like that.
Yeah, trade deadline. All of a sudden, he's a St. Louis Cardinal. Yeah. That's what I'm worried about.
You could see something like that. You could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that's I was thinking about that too because Miles mentioned or you guys mentioned Blake Snell and like the fact that like there's still rumors that him and the Angels. I'm just like, come on, man. Like it's
a Cy Young Award winner can't get a contract.
I wish there was a deadline for this kind of stuff. I really do.
Yeah,
I remember Jed was talking about it during the Cubs convention where he also wishes that there was like a deadline.
Yeah.
These deals done. Can't say bad words. That's not my job.
At this point, it needs to be. They kind of got to take a page out the NBA playbook after this offseason. I think.
Yes.
Manfred or whatever. They're gonna have to set something up where you're giving guys a deadline to sign because this is bad when you're in spring training, whether you're a manager or a player, and you like, is so and so gonna show up? He's still not signed. Yes. Like Tim Anderson's still out here without a deal.
Yeah.
It's like it's Jorge Soler. It's a lot of talent just sitting around.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree, and it works for the NBA and it works for soccer too because they have the soccer. They have a winter transfer when they have a summer and a winter transfer window, and if you don't sign, then you're stuck on your team, and that's like the way it is, and or stuck as a free agent. So yeah, like that they definitely should do that. And there's a lot of things like people were like talking about. There's a lot of things that the MLBPA has to approve for that. That some players don't like for certain reasons, and I'm ignorant to it, but like I just don't see how it benefits anybody. Just waiting it out. Like if anything, MLBPA, Yeah. Like if anything, MLBPA would I thought, or some of the players would be like, "Hey, the longer we wait, the less money we get." So you're telling me that we can have a deadline, so maybe I get more money. Like it's what it. That's like the one way I think about it. So yeah, I definitely don't see why some of these guys are sticking around. But all I'm saying is I'm with you, Miles, and like if it's gonna bite us in the ass some way, I definitely see. I mean, look, Reese Hoskins signing with the Brewers. I already know dude's gonna hit 3 home runs off of us in like at Wrigley in this on a summer day. Like it's already gonna happen. I already know. I've seen it. I've seen this movie before.
It'll
I
be
know it's gonna happen.
120. It'll be a hot day.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be a
It'll,
hot day. Kyle Hendricks,
it'll
his
be like a
changeup's
late game
hanging. It's
home run
like,
as well. And yeah, I can see it. I know it. I've been there. I've lived this.
yep. So that's how I'm just like,
And so that's another good point that you made, where it's like, if there is a deadline that they put, and all of a sudden, teams don't meet that deadline, and now you have players who are stuck in free agency, that sucks as well.
yeah.
And I think like the thought of that kind of being like, hey, we got to get this guy signed with the team, or he's not playing. I think that is more than enough. That would be more than enough motivation for certain agents or certain players or
Yeah.
whatever, because we don't want to see that. But if stuff like this cannot happen.
Yeah.
Tim Anderson not being on the team bugs the hell out of me. But we saw from him last year in Chicago. I know that's not TA. I just know it's not.
Everybody,
he's too swaggy. Yeah.
And he's just too good of a hitter. And I think, I just think that, for example, the Dodgers were one of the teams that were interested in him at the deadline, right? And now I heard there were rumors earlier in the offseason that they were interested in him. But it doesn't seem like they have enough room with the guys that they have in their infield. But still surprised that he's still out there. And I think somebody will
Miami need a shortstop.
Yeah, there you go.
I thought about the possibility of maybe the White Sox bringing him back. On a one-year deal to play second.
Yeah.
But the question is, does he want to play second?
True. That is true.
It's a lot. And the main issue is you have stars on the market still.
Yeah.
It's not like guys that's fringe level role players, glue guys, fighting to make the roster. You got top dogs still sitting at the crib with no offers. That's amazing to me.
Yeah, and I mean, we could definitely sit here and look at all the places that Tim Anderson fits, but I thought one spot that I thought would be interesting and not talked about at all, so maybe I'm wrong, but I think a spot that would be cool to see him in is maybe the Orioles, because they have guys coming up still, so sign him there for a year.
I've heard
he would fit that team very well.
Right. If he DHs, plays a little second base and days off for Gunnar or whatever, like whatever's going on there. Obviously, they have guys all over the place, so that's another spot, and also just him being a veteran presence. So I think would help out. But moving on to the farm system, and we'll get into both the Cubs and the White Sox here with the farm system, because they last week they unveiled the top 100, and the Cubs have 7 players on that top 100 list. The White Sox have 2, and I believe the Orioles are second with they have 6 on there, and of course headlined by Jackson Holliday at number 1, Jackson Churio second, and then Paul Skeens 3. So I mean, it's crazy to me to see that amount of Cubs on there, but I'm not surprised. But Miles, what did you think when you heard about this? And we saw guys make massive jumps. I mean, and again, not surprised because of the minor league season that he had, but like Matt Shaw going from like 98 to 54 now, for example. So they're flying everywhere, and it's interesting to see. I mean, the highest one obviously being PCA at 16. So what do you think about this list overall? And what do you think about the Cubs players that are on it?
Dude, it's exciting, bro. And I love that we are I love how so much of what we talk about really ties in, because the future of this franchise is looking very, very bright. We've been in this position before, and it worked out very well in the past. So I'm happy about it. I'm very happy about it, and I'm hoping all these guys continue to develop well. I'm really looking forward to seeing Matt Shaw down the line and a few of the other prospects coming up. It's promising. It's very promising stuff, and I am sure so much of this is being taken into consideration for many different plans when it comes to the Cubs. So yeah, very, very promising. And I'm hoping to see certain guys who maybe struggle a little bit maybe they'll get another opportunity this year. I would love to see Matt Mervis back up and get another opportunity because I think he is. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like he is not talked about at all anymore. I've
Mm-hmm.
heard him, or at least talked about very little. Someone who I'd love to see potentially get another chance if certain things don't work out. So just in general, I love this young system that we have going here. To have seven, that's lit.
Yeah, and you mentioning Matt Mervis, that's another thing that kind of ties into the fact that getting prepared for a season without Bellinger. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that means more opportunity for Matt Mervis. That means more opportunity for Michael
Yes.
Busch to play first base.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's another. Like, again, we talked about it before when the Cubs got Michael Busch. That's one of the reasons I think they got him was insurance in case they don't get Bellinger, which they're getting prepared because they know they got to get these guys because Busch plays first base, mostly first base. Apparently, I've heard his defense isn't great at third. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But looking down the list with Crow Armstrong, Cade Horton, Owen Casey, Michael Busch, Matt Shaw, Kevin Alcantara, and James Santos, like it's just loaded, and I'm excited to see because some people really do hope or expect Cade Horton to come up this year. Who knows? But I think that would
Totally else.
be badass, and just like seeing what he
Yeah.
could do because I mean he is as touted and people talk about him like like he's the next ace. I can't wait to see it. I mean I've seen highlights already. The dude absolutely balls. So Gabe, what did you think about this list? Not only for the Cubs side of things, but also with the White Sox. I mean, you can talk about the Cubs having 7 dudes, but the Cubs don't have a top 10. Like left-handed shortstop Colson Montgomery. I mean that dude is so nasty. And like looking at his numbers from last year, I remember when I was doing some work for the White Sox NBC, like Colson Montgomery smacks lefties. I mean, he had a nasty over OPS over 1,000. Granted, it was a short sample size of games, but it doesn't matter to me, especially a minor league. When you see a minor leaguer, a guy like for his stature, smacking lefties as a left-handed batter, it's great news. And not to mention also Noah Schultz is now the 50th overall prospect in the majors. Dude, this I mean, like the comparisons we get to Chris Sale on that guy, I've seen that already, and just like what the White Sox have there. And he can make to the big leagues like in the next like couple of years. So it's like that's another thing too to be excited about. But what do you think about this list as a whole, as well as the White Sox and Cubs parts into it?
I was a bit surprised to see the Cubs had more top
Mm-hmm.
100 prospects than the Baltimore Orioles. I knew that they were going to have several guys. I like Matt Shaw's game a lot. Matt Shaw was a guy that I had on my big board for the White Sox. Um, Unfortunately, the Cubs was 2 picks up, and they got a chance to get him before the White Sox were able to pick at 15 when they selected Jacob Gonzalez out of Ole Miss last year to
Mm-hmm.
draft. But I like what they're building there. And it's cool to see, but especially when that's been the selling point that they made to their fan base. And
Mm-hmm.
I give the Cubs a ton of credit for doing a great job of developing talent. On the other side of town with the White Sox, they had a highest ranked prospect in Colson Montgomery. That's cool to see, top 10 prospect and a kid that for him coming out of high school shows a great deal of maturity at the plate as a high level knowledge of the strike zone, very disciplined hitter. You don't see that a lot. And I think that's why he's been able to progress up the system so easily, in spite of having injuries. The only thing I want to see from Colson is how does he fare once he gets called to AAA Charlotte. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't rush Colson up until at least the middle of June, late summer, second half of the season. I really want the White Sox to take their time with the kid and just let him continue to grow and show that he could do this with a full body of work behind him and he's able to stay healthy. I don't know what his long-term position may be. He could be a guy that you see at third base down
Mm-hmm.
the road, but he's shown and made tremendous strides defensively as short to stick there, in the interim time once he's called up. He don't have nobody blocking him from short at this time on the current 40-man roster. As for Noah Schultz, he's a guy, if he can stay healthy, his delivery concerns me a little bit. I do see the Chris Sale comparison, but if he can stay
Mm-hmm.
healthy, develop a changeup, he will be a top 30 prospect come next winter. I guarantee you that. And he gets more innings behind him. He'd be nice. We also got Edgar Carroll, who is a top 10 catcher. According to all the catchers on MLB Pipeline, was a top 100 prospect, fell off I think if he continues to show tries defensively, you will see him elevate himself back on that top 100 list.
Mm-hmm.
Angels rushed him up Double-A. The White Sox are going to be more patient with him in his development, not seeking to rush him. He could be a guy that's ready to go as early as 2025 or the middle of 2025. So it's nice to see Chicago prospects being well represented on the list, even though the White Sox have 2, Cubs have 7. But hopefully the future is bright on both sides of town.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad I really hope the White Sox also don't rush Montgomery because he got time for him to develop and work out those kinks and whatever he's got to work on, which it doesn't look like as much, to be honest. I mean, him being 6'3", Gabe, you brought up a good point of which position he's going to play because with his size at 6'3", could easily play third base and all that. But I mean, we've seen a shortstop like him in the big leagues, and I've heard also comparisons to Corey Seager because I mean Corey Seager's 6'4". So yeah, we'll see what happens there, but I know definitely that's one of the guys that I'm excited to watch on the south side for
athletic.
Sure. Exactly. But Miles does have to go. He's at work, so I want to send off Miles. Appreciate you coming out, man, and
sure.
we'll see you next week. And like I said, thanks for coming out, man.
Thanks, fellas. I'll see you on the next one. By the way, happy Black History Month.
Oh yeah,
yes sir.
Yeah. I'll talk to you guys soon. You guys take it easy.
All right, bro. Take it easy. All right, but to kind of transition more into the White Sox as we were just talking about them, Gabe, there's been I wouldn't say like really established rumors or anything like that, but there's been some murmurs, I guess, that the Mariners and White Sox were kind of working out a deal, maybe even a 3-team deal, stuff like that. And then I also heard that Alex Anthopoulos, the GM for the Braves, a fan asked him about about getting Dylan Cease, and he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he's talked about it being too expensive, which we've talked about it being rightfully so. But what do you think about the trade that the White Sox could make with the Mariners? If that's something that would happen, and then also just the words from the Braves GM because the Mariners have plenty of arms that they could deal. They have plenty of players in the minors. It's really, really fascinating to see what they would do there because even the people have talked about, again, no rumors here, but people have talked about how they would even be a nice dance partner with the Cubs because they, even like, I'm not saying they're doing this, but like you're telling me there's a deal that we could work out where we send a prospect, Christopher Morel, for like a George Kirby. Like I'm all in, honestly, because that's George Kirby's a hell of an arm. So, what do you think about the Mariners rumors, and as well as Alex Anthopoulos talking about it being too expensive? Because the Braves, of course, have I don't know if they have the prospects for it necessarily. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, they have some nice players, but like we've always said, that there's better teams out there to trade with. I think that's what the White Sox are waiting for.
Yeah, to me, when I saw the report from Bob Nightingale that the Mariners were interested in Dylan Cease, I'm not surprised by that. Mm-hmm. However, I feel like that's a leverage play from Chris Getz and the White Sox front office to up the price a little bit or to force the team that they really want to do business with, and that's the Baltimore Orioles and Mike Elias, who's the general manager there at Camden Yards. So when I look at that situation, the thing I can't understand is why would Seattle, a team that is in a division with the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros, want to trade away young arms that they have developed in Bryce Miller or Brian Wu to acquire Dylan Cease when they need a couple of more impact bats in their lineup. We just saw them give away a top 100 prospect in Gabriel Gonzalez to the Minnesota Twins to get Jorge Polanco. Good move, but you still need to find out how you're going to solidify right field. I know you bought Mitch Haniger back, but Are you sure you trust Mitch Haniger, a guy that's been injury prone over the years, and when healthy has provided you with some solid numbers, but can you count on that as he gets a little bit older? That's a question that remains to be answered and seen over the course of the 2024 season. But when I look at that's just a way to leverage the price up and play a little bit of hardball and just let people know that we're not messing around if you're Chris Getz and Josh Barfield and his staff over there. Because unless if the Mariners are putting up Bryce Miller, Cole Emerson, and Lazaro Montes, who's drawn many comparisons to Yordan Alvarez with his left-handed stroke from the plate and tremendous power that he exhibits, could have easily been a top 100 prospect and is on the fringe of being one. Unless you're giving up those three players, there's no need to really be talking business with Seattle. Although the one upside, if you do want to do a potential trade with the Mariners, if you're the White Sox or you're a White Sox fan, they have shown that they know how to develop players rather well within their system. I know most people look at Jerry Kelnick and say that may not be true, but most people fail to realize that Jerry Kelnick was a Mets prospect before he became a Mariners prospect. Just saying.
Yeah, no, yeah. And I think, no, I'm right there with you, by the way, Gabe, when it comes to the arm thing. I think of them giving up their arms and all that. I think ultimately, I think they're so desperate for offense that they're willing to give up their excess arms. And as much as, look, I trust me, I'm also on the boat that you can't have enough arms nowadays.
Absolutely.
So I don't, right? And you have guys in the rotation that, they definitely, they have a stacked rotation when it comes to young arms. But yeah, I think they're just so desperate for offense, man. It's like that they're getting, I mean, the fact that they, hey, no disrespect to Jorge Polanco, because he's a good player, but they definitely need something more than that. Like when I saw that deal, I was like, man, I mean, okay, so it's a push in the right direction, but ultimately you need, more than that. That's why we talked about the fact that they got rid of Kelnick, which was a little strange because they got rid of offense there. But that's one thing that I'm very confused about what exactly they're trying to do there. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you can't have Dylan Cease as your headliner when you're trying to get a bat. So that's why it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I just really think that's the White Sox way of trying to force Baltimore's hands. Because Mike Elias has been standing pat. One thing we know about Jerry DiPoto, who's the general manager of the Seattle Mariners, he's not afraid to make a trade. And this dates back to his time when he was the general manager of the Angels. So if I could get them to bite on that and get what I want back in return, I can make that work. If I'm Chris Getz, yes, I want an arm. I want an outfielder. And if I could get a middle infielder in return for Cease alone, sign me up for it, especially if they're top 100 level prospect. But I think personally, he's seeking to get a top 30 prospect as part of his package. And who better to offer that to him than a team with an assortment of riches in the Baltimore Orioles?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I just remember that my buddy brought up a good point too with the Mariners thing, is that like he doesn't see a deal that would happen with the Orioles unless maybe the Orioles are trying to get a package deal of like Eloy and Dylan Cease, which at that point, if you're trying to do that, then you're going to give up a hell of a ransom anyways. So I don't know, right? So I don't know what they'd be willing to offer or what the White Sox would be willing to accept there, but that's the kind of, maybe that's like that at that point, like, I mean, I can't even imagine the type of prospects and the type of players you would get in a deal like that, but that'd be amazing.
I got a source that told me before you move on. The White Sox and the Orioles are basically at a stalemate. That's what it comes down to. At some point, one side's going to have to budge. And for all the White Sox fans that are upset at Chris Getz for not trading Cease at this point in time, you got to understand something. He's a first-time GM. He's not trying to get finessed and swindled out here. And the other GMs around the league know that. So if they can try to get him to bite on a deal, they'll try. But at the end of the day, Chris Getz holds the cards. And he shouldn't seek to trade him for less than for pennies on a dollar. He shouldn't seek to do that. He has to take his time. And this may be a process that goes into the season, although I would hope it doesn't. It could be, because teams aren't willing to pay that price, especially with top-tier free agents and all-stars, might I add, still on the market.
Exactly. And I think that's the good thing too, that look, or that's the important part that I think people have to realize, is that this deal could could really, and it's not, I don't think it's over exaggerating here, that it could determine the White Sox future,
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
it's a franchise altering deal. It's almost like the Mookie Betts deal that set up the Red Sox in a negative way now. So yeah, it's gonna take a lot to get Dylan Cease, and like we said, rightfully so. And hopefully the White Sox make the right move. Because like I said, they have an opportunity to really do it. And yeah, like we've always said, and you mentioned the most, the fact that the best team to match it up with is the Orioles. And if they match up with the Orioles, I mean, it's the return I already know is going to be nasty. And those players could be out sooner rather than later, because those Orioles players, as we said, have 6 players in the top 100, and I'm
Yep.
sure you'll get one. So, um, uh, also, what do you think about the Rob Manfred comments? Because again, I'm paraphrasing, but he was talking about how he approves of the White Sox stadium in the South Loop, and just in general, a new White Sox stadium. But what do you think about that? Do you think it boosts the chances of the White Sox getting a new stadium, or how does that, how do you think Reinsdorf takes that?
From what I done heard, it's sort of a done deal at this point, but
Uh-huh.
any support that you can strike up as a tally
Hmm.
to go to the governor and JB Prisker with, I think that's a win. I wouldn't expect for Rob Manfred to say anything differently. I'm pretty sure that Jerry Reinsdorf and his staff have briefed him in on the details to some degree, maybe not fully,
Hmm.
but it's a positive. I don't think a lot of White Sox fans will take solace in this news too much until they see a fork in the ground, so to speak, and they see construction being done on the site. But they have to do this in order to go into the meeting feeling good and positive with JB Prisker when that time comes. We know, being residents of the state of Illinois, that JB Prisker isn't in favor of taxpayer funded stadiums. And if they're trying to increase the taxes in an effort to help the White Sox get this stadium, he may not be fond of that. But if it's a way that they could work with the previous agreement and use that previous agreement and keep the sales tax, the hotel tax at the same levels, and which has been there for the last, I believe, 3+ decades, that it might be able to work, and just move the bonds towards that need to be still paid off towards the new project. It could still work, combined with money that Jerry Reinsdorf and White Sox owners and the board of trustees are willing to put up. So remains to be seen, but you take it as a positive for sure. And it's good to have the commissioner support on um, a project such as that.
Yeah, and yeah, yeah, we'll see where things going overall in Chicago, because like the Bears are also in some people are still saying, with the fact that the Bears are still considering staying in Chicago, that was a good spot for a stadium too. I'm not saying they will do that, but like that's just rumors, people talking. But like I really do hope the White Sox, just because of the fact that like I would be excited to see what another stadium looks like in Chicago, another baseball stadium. So, but you know what? Something I didn't mention too, Gabe, from last time, I was like, I hope whatever happens with the White Sox stadium, the food, as long as the food remains elite, that's all I'm concerned about. Especially the root beer floats, in my opinion, is one of the best parts of there. So as long as they keep that, I won't be mad or anything. As long as they keep that type of style, because I'll tell you right now, I'm not kidding. I'm not even making. I told my brother, I proved it to him, because he went to one of his first games at Guaranteed Rate. But that
Mhm.
root beer float, in my opinion, is like one of the best root beer floats you can get anywhere. I'm not even kidding. I've tried it multiple
I know a
places.
lot of
It's
people who like the
it's
root
really
beer
good.
floats, the grilled onions. And I'll say
Yeah.
this, you know what would be real funny about it if they actually do move to Roosevelt and Clark? You would have both
Mhm.
baseball teams playing on Clark Street.
Oh yeah.
Like that would be some funny things. It's funny how
Eh,
things come full circle oftentimes in life. That would be real
Yeah.
hilarious to see, but cool nonetheless.
Yeah, like think about it. Like in 50 years, what if they're gonna start calling it the rivalry on Clark Street or something like that? So
You
it's
could, you
right.
could,
It's
you
gonna be,
could,
yeah. Yes,
you
that's a good
could.
point. But the last couple of things I wanted to get to before we wrap up here is, of course, the biggest news I think in the last week was the fact that the Angelos sell the Orioles, and Orioles fans rejoice all over the world, because man, it's been a rough ride with Angelos, and especially over the last couple of years. With what he's, how he's talked about certain players, and when he's talked about, like, they're not going to be able to keep certain players in the long run and all this stuff, and this opens a whole batch of possibilities now for Baltimore, You could make an argument that with these guys that have bought him, which was I believe it's a philanthropist and investor, David Rubenstein. He wasn't the only one. I mean, Cal Ripken is part of that group that bought the Orioles. So yeah, I mean, you can make an argument that this changes the franchise because they might be able to keep Adley, they might be able to keep Gunnar long term, they might be able to keep Jackson Holiday long term. So this Orioles team that we thought maybe their window is short and small, may have just widened a little bit. But yeah, I've never seen Oriole fans this excited because Angelo has made some comments recently that just it really, as an Orioles fan, I'm sure really ticked them off. So what'd you think about this move, Gabe?
It was a move that I heard about as far back as several months ago, rather.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes a lot of sense. David Rubenstein, who will eventually become the majority owner, is a lifelong Baltimore native, Orioles fan, and he has a lot of things working in his favor. He has the benefits of a new lease. Just last month, the Orioles in the city of Baltimore, they agreed to a new lease that'll keep the team in Camden Yards for the foreseeable future. We also know that they got the TV deal resolved, and you add that on top of having a plethora of young talent and a guy that has a boatload of money to spend and is invested in the team, being a lifelong fan and native of the city. I think it's a perfect marriage, to tell you the truth. And it hopefully leads to them operating in a different manner than what we've been accustomed to seeing them operate. And maybe it can expedite the process for a potential trade that a lot of Chicago White Sox fans like myself would like to see happen. So I like the move a lot for the Orioles. They've always been a hallmark franchise when operated and ran well. A lot of people don't know, but back in the 70s and 80s, they had some tremendous years under Earl Weaver, Cal Ripken, and the like. And Cal Ripken being on that ownership board is even cooler to see. So I've always liked seeing players that are retired finding their next chapter, being involved with a franchise, especially a franchise that they came up in and played in and won a championship with. That's real cool to see. So I'm happy for the fans in the wake of Angelo's comments, who we know wasn't really truly committed to putting the money up. And I think with Rubenstein aboard and his associates, they're damn sure gonna do whatever it takes to put that money up and bring a World Series back to Baltimore for the first time since 1983.
Yeah, and I think hopefully it does put them into overdrive and kind of like kick it into gear, and hopefully they can start making deals. And it's crazy too that I saw the fact that they went from a value of 173 million in 1993 to 1.7 billion dollars. So the value skyrocketed for the Orioles, and in this century, I mean, they've had pretty good teams, and especially with the likes of when Chris Davis was hitting 50 bombs, and they had Adam Jones and Manny Machado, and so they had some great teams in the 20, especially in the aughts, and they just weren't able to get done. I believe they made it to an ALCS. Am I wrong on that?
They did.
Reason, yeah, right. They did. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was when they lost to the Royals. They lost to the Royals.
Sure did.
So they definitely they were close, and they had great teams, but they weren't able to get over the hump. And but that shows you how even just a few winning years can boost a team's value, and they did. That's more than enough. So we'll see what happens there. But happy for Orioles fans all over the place, because they definitely deserve that with the team that they have now, and hopefully they have for about a decade plus at this point if they are able to do things right. So hopefully everything works out. And another thing too, that the last thing I wanted to talk about was they released the cover of MLB The Show 24, and it wasn't without complaint, that's for sure. So, but I wanted your opinion on this, because look, as much as I'm a fan of Vladdy Guerrero Jr., guy's a beast, home run hitter, the name sells, understand that. But I was just kind of surprised that it wasn't like an Acuna, it wasn't a Juan Soto. And I get Acuna, he has got like a deal with another game or something like that. I heard that he could, whatever. But like, man, there's a plain. I mean, you could have put honestly, Gabe, you could have put Otani on there and it would have sold. So like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you could have put Otani again on there because I know he did it in 22. But like, I was honestly pretty surprised. But I will say, on the positive side, like I said, it's glad to see another Lamb brother on there. So like, that's a positive. But ultimately, the positive aside, Gabe, what did you think about this cover? Did you think anybody? You look, I will say also another thing too that I thought would have been badass for them to do because it looks like MLB The Show's kind of like they don't really care what team this guys like the guys on the cover are. So like for example, Jazz Chisholm last year, a lot of people question that, but I personally liked it because of the fact that Jazz Chisholm is very exciting. He's up and coming. We haven't seen what he's done yet so far, but I do definitely see the talent. But the same thing with that is that like what if they went out there and put Luis Robert on there? Is all I'm saying. Like that, right? I mean, if they put a guy like Jazz Chisholm on there, like why not putting a guy like Luis Robert? I understand that some fans out there think that the White Sox are dangling him on trades, which would be insane in general. But what do you think about that cover? And then also just my hope that maybe the MLB The Show goes for Luis Robert because we know he deserves it when it comes to the numbers, right?
Yeah, I didn't think about Luis Robert Jr.
Yeah.
being on the cover for the show, but when you bring up the case that you made, I definitely think he's a
Mm-hmm.
guy that could be on there in the future as he continues to ascend and grow into being that perennial all-star that we know that he has the potential to be.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing Vlad on there, I'm not gonna lie, it was cool, especially
Mm-hmm.
as someone who grew up in a time period where I was fascinated with Canadian sports teams.
Mm-hmm.
And the Toronto Blue Jays was always at the top of that list with the late Doc Holliday when he was there and them not really getting his just due. I felt like from the American media until he stepped over um back, home on American soil and pitched for the Phillies. But I like Vlad getting a chance to have his son and the son on the cover, especially 18 to 19 years after his father did it when he was with the Angels. So it's kind of like a full circle moment. That's real cool to see. I know a lot of people knock him and say, well, his numbers haven't been the same since his 2021 campaign, but he's still, managing to put up solid power numbers, even though they decreased. Hopefully, he can build himself back up to that level he was at in 2021 and have an even better year in 2024. But I can't really knock the cover. I think another guy that you could have made a case for being on the cover is Ellie De La Cruz. I
Yeah,
like
hell
guys
yeah.
that play with,
Uh-huh.
with speed, guys that can impact the game in many ways. And he came onto the scene last year, even though he kind of fizzled out down the stretch,
Mm-hmm.
and really made the game of baseball exciting for me as a fan to watch. So guys like Ellie De La Cruz, Luis Robert Jr. definitely have cases for future years, but I don't have no problem with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. being on the cover and representing the franchise north of the border that has some talent. I mean, Bo Bichette could have easily been on the cover. There's
Yeah.
a lot of young talent in baseball that could be featured on the cover, and to have one of the young players and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. being on there, I can't really knock that. I don't have an issue with it. Jordan Brand representative, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, and you're right. Ellie De La Cruz would have been a great pick too. I mean, he went off last year and but yeah, I mean, I can't. I'll definitely admit that I wouldn't be able to choose. I wouldn't be able to be part of the group that chooses because it's really hard to choice, a really hard choice. And also, there's a lot of like stuff you have to go through, kind of like I said with the Cunha, like guys are under contract to certain things, can't do certain
Yeah.
things, whatever. So yeah, that's true. And I will say also that Vlad Guerrero, maybe this, has him get locked in a little more, and then you never know. He has a big year, hits 40 bombs this year, whatever. I mean, he even said like he said this week, quote, "This is my season," so he's getting hyped and he's ready to have a big season. So
One
hopefully
home run
he's able to
derby
do
too.
that.
So that
Exactly.
helps.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that too. Exactly. So hopefully he's able to do that and repeat. We love seeing dudes repeat and defend his title. So I can't wait for that. But I think it's a good place to wrap things up for this edition of the At Bad podcast presented by War Media. I want to thank Miles for coming on. Of course, he went back to work, so appreciate him coming on during his work shift. I want to appreciate Gabe for coming on as well. You can check out his podcast, The State of Gabe, available on Spotify. I want to thank everyone for watching. Watch everything War Media, as well as our partnership with Sports Zone Chicago as we do Bears Den as well. I want to thank everyone for watching. For Saul Rodriguez, Gabe Wilkins. Everyone, peace out.